There is a mountain of evidence that the moon landing was faked. But some of my absolute favorite evidence among all of that is the wet flag on the moon. This is an image of the Apollo 17 moon landing flag, and this image was taken directly from the NASA website, hq.nasa.gov. There's a direct link to the website in this video's description where you can see it for yourself. And I have an image title here in the bottom left corner for your convenience. But as you can see, the flag is very clearly wet. As we know, material looks darker when it gets wet. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. I'm pretty sure this initial observation was first made in the documentary American Moon, which I have a link to here if you want to see it, as we're seeing. But I was not made aware of it until I heard the GLOBEBUSTERS talking about it. This video, however, is not on the GLOBEBUSTERS channel as far as I'm aware, making it a little harder to find. But it is a gem that I found over on Iriu's channel, Nur para Todos. And the content of this video just isn't mentioned often enough, so I had to come and talk about it myself. Now, please enjoy as I go ahead and share some highlights from their video, along with some of my own discoveries that I made as I have looked into this myself.
That particular image has been viewed by millions of people a year over the last 45 years. It's up on walls, probably 10 or 12 feet high. It's photographed in books and magazines and everywhere else. And of course, it's the American symbol as well, your very reverent symbol. And everybody that has analyzed and studied this photo in any way, shape, or form has never looked at it and seen that it's wet.
Yeah.
It quite clearly is.
That is amazing, because it absolutely is. You can see along here where the arrows are, the line between the dry and the wet part of the flag. And of course, it's very obvious over here. It's even crinkled up, almost like it just came out of a washing machine or a rainstorm.
It's in the red and white as well. It's harder to see.
Here is one highlighted example in the red that I was able to spot. Notice how it is not in the fold and how it is not in shadow. It is just plain and simply darker, like the wet streak we see along the stars.
Yeah, you can see it if you study it. The harder you study it, the more you see it. And of course, when you realize that it's wet, and it was raining, the entire set is wet.
And that kind of goes back to when it comes to this conspiracy, right? There's many schools of thought. Was this all shot in a studio, in a Hollywood basement? But, when you start looking at some of the other evidence here that Scott's uncovered, where you've got standing water on some of the equipment, you've got mold growing, and you've got a wet flag, just to name a few, it's clear that this was shot outside and over a long period of time where the weather and the elements, took its toll on the equipment and the props and everything that was involved.
But this one, it's very obvious, especially along here, that this is wet through and through.
A couple other shots as well where you can see that it appears that something has gotten wet, some of the equipment, and then it has dried and has left, what it looks like is mud that has dried.
Now check out this window.
You know what they say, space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Flagstaff landfill.
Yes. In this particular picture, buried in the report server of NASA, when I was reading through the many thousands and thousands of PDFs, a pressure test done on the CSM blew that window out. And you can see that they just duct taped it back together. They put a rain guard on it. That rain guard is broken. And of course the seal's gone because the water is in between the two layers of glass, and it's been in there long enough to peel the paint up.
Duct tape fixes anything.
The official version of that photograph with the water running down in zero gravity, of course, is halfway to the moon.
Yeah.
Okay, it's minus 250 outside and the water doesn't freeze.
Magic.
Amazing. Magic.
Amazing piece of glass.
I think it is interesting how it is not just one photo we are looking at here, but we actually see this in a series of photos directly on the NASA website that all oddly say no description. But that is totally okay because you can just simply look at it and it is quite self-explanatory. Again, I've got a direct link to the source images in this video's description. And with some of them, you have to rotate the picture around because they were taking the picture at odd angles. This one is a perfect example of that. Let me show you. Here I just rotated the picture 90 degrees. Now watch what happens when I zoom in. Do you want to tell me that those are not muddy water streaks on that window there? If this doesn't convince you that the moon landings were bogus, I don't know what will. There should be no excuse for these gray, muddy water streaks falling down the window out in the middle of outer space. Again, this is directly from the NASA website. Go see it for yourself.
Yeah, now this to me looks like, you've got like leftovers from water here. You see this looks like
it's so wet.
Yeah.
So if you look at the backdrop, the so-called mountain in this, when you're going through the Apollo 17 photos, as the ground in front dries out, then it starts to match the backdrop. So when you go back two or three magazines further on, they'll match up in color.
Yeah.
But when
this is so blatantly different.
Dark in color, and that's why the footprints are so much darker as well. And it's the same as if you were walking in sand or anything else, right?
Yeah.
Or any dirt, when you kick it up, it's darker underneath as it starts to dry on top. Yeah. That particular photograph, they must have been shooting quite a few golf balls around, because there's quite a number of them out there on that set. Yeah,
there's a ton of them. The other thing that strikes me, of course, is right along the little plus marks here where the Hasselblad has the plus marks, you can clearly see this bifurcation mark in between the foreground and the background. That, I mean, it is so obvious that they are so blatantly different that how anybody could not look at that and go, come on, really? I mean, it's not even a good blending job. They didn't even try.
Well, because it rained, they would have had the ground closer. Like, if the ground wasn't wet, it's much closer match.
Yeah, but in this case, it was wet, so it made it a little bit darker.
That's right. And if you go through 2 or 3 magazines later, then this particular same spot is much lighter. It's much closer to the background as it dries out.
Yeah. Yeah, not surprising. And, of course, then we have mud on the wheels from the Rover, which I thought was pretty crazy. And, and then earlier, the mud on the suit. So I'm just curious, Scott, if, when you show people, like, for example, the mud on the spacesuits that we were looking at earlier, what do they say when they look at that? I mean, what excuse do they make when you're saying, look, there's the mud right there on the spacesuit? Let me get to this. Whoops, there it was. When they look at this, what excuse do they have for that? Do they just say, well, it's just regular dirt, or what?
I haven't heard anybody tell me that it's anything other than just dirt that is sticking to the suit, static or whatever is causing it.
Moon dirt, man.
Why doesn't the whole suit get like, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially as often as they fall or they're down on their knees or whatever. But I mean, this is so obvious that this is mud. I mean, this is absolutely positively mud. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. And then you can see, of course, over here where they've washed it off, it's still wet. They didn't even try to hide any of that. And, we know that everything that goes up into space is pristine clean, in the first place. And yeah, of course, you're going to get some dirt on it from the moon or soot, but this is mud, and there should be absolutely no water, because in the shade it would be ice, and in the sun it would evaporate. instantly. So there is no excuse for obviously any water being up there whatsoever. And yet the flag is soaked with it. There's mud all over his suit. How can anybody buy this? It's beyond me.
So, two things cross my mind when I see all this evidence of the wet set. Was this intentional? Did they just soak the ground beforehand so it didn't kick up so much dust to make it less obvious? Or was this an act of divine intervention, where God literally decided to rain on their parade and expose them as the frauds that they were? Or perhaps both? The GLOBEBUSTERS here seem to be under the impression that these actronauts are trying to drop hints that this whole thing is a sham.
Well, I mean, the astronauts are showing this off. They
Yeah.
deliberately put that mud up on that sleeve and took that picture, and everybody thinks, oh, they're on the moon. They're not. They're just a couple of guys having fun in the mud, showing off a wet flag. And if you realize that it rained, everything is wet.
Yep. So here we are back at the flag again. Of course, this is very, very apparent that it's wet, especially along the top. You can see it running down here.
Yeah, just through this over and over again. That just seems to be. It was just such a blatant, a piece of evidence that we decided let's put this in every video, at least one shot of it, just to remind folks that, this is almost blatant. All should have been pulled out. There's no way that this stuff should be even existing like we talked about.
And that is just one image. But when I decided to go and look into this for myself, lo and behold, I discovered a whole series of images where I could spot the wet marks in the photos that were taken from different angles. And NASA's proposed budget for 2023 is $26 billion? America, wake up and speak up. This needs to stop. This message has been brought to you by the Flat Earth Institute of Science, with a special thank you to the GLOBEBUSTERS. We love you. Thank you all for watching. And Mr. Sensible, check out these rooster tails! Totally impossible on Earth, right? They must be on the moon! Just look at those perfect parabolas!
So this is all very well. Why does this lunar rover prove that it's on the moon? Well, just look at the dust that it kicks up. It is not behaving as it does on Earth. The dust is thrown up and moves in perfect parabolas. You can see what the astronauts on Apollo 16 called rooster tails coming off the back of the lunar rover.
And notice how slow those rooster tails are rising up into the air. It's a perfect indication of a slow frame rate. Now let's go watch that at a faster frame rate so we can notice just how much more natural it looks. There we go, that's better.
That is not how sand and dust behaves on Earth with an atmosphere. What you get is billowing clouds of dust, not nice, neat curves of dust that fall down in a perfect parabola.
You seem to be saying this can only happen on the moon. I'm sorry, pal. I don't agree with you on that one. Your dirt just has to be moist.